Thank you for allowing the opportunity to speak to you this evening about a subject area or a topic that is important to the board, and we believe in the end we'll have what we call national significance, in that what we're talking about now we're hoping to take to the national conference of the A sector next year in February, March, somewhere near there, and present this as an idea that they might like to look at the national level. And so I guess there's a sincerity about what I'm doing, as well as some lightheartedness around it, because we don't want to take it all too seriously at the end of the day. But you can see that we're looking at the concept of a teaching standards framework, and it's quite a complex concept overall. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about it without going through the slides, because I'll mention things that I'll come back to in the slides. But in terms of teaching standards, it's common right across the education sector now, whether it be at university level, whether it be TAFE schools or adult education, to have the concept of teaching standards. It's to do with teaching. It's not so much competencies or skills or anything like that. It's your ability to teach. And it's got an importance for a number of reasons, in that generally the profession is moving towards this approach, and secondly, industry is starting to ask the questions. If I'm going to send people to your programs, your courses, how do I know that they're getting what we'll call best practice teaching? It's fine to have a syllabus, and it's fine to have some content and some diagrams, what it all means. But until you get into the classroom and the teacher actually delivers, it doesn't mean very much at all. And people now, or industry in particular, is starting to say, are your teachers qualified? Whatever that might mean to them or to us. And so this is a move to take people in that direction. I want to stress at this stage, though, that there's nothing compulsory about this at this point in time. It's an idea we've got, it's an idea that is evolving from session to session, and what I'll be looking for at the end of this period is for you to give me feedback as to where it is now, because it's probably only a quarter to halfway there. It still needs a lot of work and a lot of fine-tuning, but it's now up to the practitioners to tweak it, not the people like me who love drawing boxes on pages and looking up hard words to confuse everybody. So it's going to sort of come back to you at the end of this session. Where do I fit into all of this? Well, as announced, I'm on the board. The board has a strategic plan. This was picked up as one of the ideas we would carry forward. I've got carriage of it on the board in the sense that I've got a broad education background. I've been a school principal, I've been an administrator in the Department of Education, I run my own consultancy in education now, and I work with the boards of studies and the universities and all of those types of areas in education. So it's fallen into my basket to see if we can carry it and drive this forward. I guess the best thing for me to do now is start to move through the slides rather than rambling all over the place. So the first thing I have to emphasise is that this is not a one-off situation. It has a strategic purpose. It's inside the college's own strategic plan, and we've had discussions already at the national level where people are interested in this being carried forward across the A sector in the broad concept of things. Maybe not exactly as we do it, but along those particular lines. So, standards in themselves. What we need is to set up a set of standards that are sufficiently rigorous enough to meet the needs and expectations of industry, which I've mentioned, and the general community. The biggest problem we face is that we've got a range of experience in the college, and we've got a range of types of courses, from leisure type courses right up to accredited and standard courses. And people come to those with their teaching background or their teaching experience accordingly. what we want to do is put everybody under the same umbrella. So what fits for a diploma course will fit for a leisure or a beginning type introductory course to whatever the subject area has to be. There are a number of other standards out there. VET has them, schools have them, everybody has them. But I think when we worked through the literature on this, we were decided that it wasn't enough just to take one of those existing sets.
Come in, sorry.
Might have a severe mark.
It wasn't enough just to say, oh, let's take the VET, that's close enough. When we looked at the literature, there were certain things about teaching in this sector that were unique to this sector and needed to be captured in the way that we teach. So we're attempting to cover that range in teaching styles, teaching experience, whatever you want to call it. It is very research-based. We spend a lot of time going through the literature to have a look at what's been done in this area already and what people are saying about this sector in terms of teaching. There's a lot of other aspects of community college, but we're looking particularly at the teaching area and where does it fit in the broad continuum of education, and then where does it fit specifically as a unique teaching style or position. The ACE sector, and I'm putting some quotes up there, and I'll tend to read them because I don't know them at this stage, but you can see that there was a major report in '97 from the Commonwealth of Australia that said it's characterised by educational outcomes that combine cognitive and social capacities with technical and cultural developments. Big sorts of words, but mixed into this are core concepts that don't always apply to other sectors. And so we've got the cognitive, the thinking, learning skills, we've got all the social skills, the technical, and of course the cultural plays a major part. Big culture, in that we come from India, or we come from New Zealand, or we come from another culture, to minute culture in that the way we operate in this sector, our relationships and all that forms its own culture, and we have an understanding of how we coexist and work in the organisation as a team. So all of that is captured there. The effectiveness of ACE programs can be largely attributed to the holistic and flexible approaches adopted for teaching and learning within the sector. So we've got a big circle that accommodates a whole range of people, holistic, everything is inside there, but at the same time it's very flexible and there is no one way to teach. You could well walk into a classroom in a school and be told you're not teaching well, because this is how we teach in this domain. This is the broad parameters, but you're not inside that, you're out here somewhere. It would be very hard to walk into a community classroom and say, you can't teach that way, because if it's working, it's effective, and that's what we're really about at the end of the day. So that flexibility has to remain in there, and there's no attempt by putting things in boxes, which we'll see a bit later on, that we're saying, oh, everyone fit into a box somewhere, because we don't want you outside those boxes. We're trying to let it remain flexible and belong to you, your style. But inside the framework, if we want some consistency and some guarantee to the client that yes, there is a quality product that we're serving here. Effective teachers work with learners in several levels, developing personal skills, social skills, while teaching practical skills and across the broad range of program areas. So we've got a big variety of programs. It's not like a syllabus, history, geography, maths, English, that's about the end of it. This goes right across the spectrum, and of course the personal relationship stuff is probably more important than any other aspect of what you're doing in your classroom. It's how the student is relating to you that we need to pick up on and to focus on. Also, ACE draws on a wide range of strategies and approaches, and there's a word that was banned in the Department of Education. We weren't actually allowed to use it. It's sad when your own language from your discipline or your profession is banned. But pedagogies, all it means is really just ways of teaching. That's really all it means, and perhaps that's what we should say. But the pedagogical, come in, foster and nurture generic skills development. Successful ACE teachers employ complex and multi-dimensional pedagogies rather than one-dimensional. You can go into a lot of classrooms in the room. The teacher virtually comes in like a robot, goes through the process. I reward you, you give me the answer, you put your hand up, and it's almost a mechanical process. And I'm not putting that side of teaching down, but it exists. You won't find that in our sector. It's a very vibrant and a very differentiated environment when you walk into it. There is probably no two classrooms operating in the same mode, and so we have to make sure that we're conscious of that all the way through. It's about attending simultaneously to the personal, here we go again, the relational, the social and the practical and the moral dynamics. You do all of that at the same time. Whenever you're interacting with a student, all of that is in play. Whereas when we go to schools or lecturers, somebody looks after the social domain, and that's their job. Someone looks after the cognitive domain, and that's their particular job. They might have meetings where they all get together, but in this domain, you tend to be on your own, and all of those factors are operating. It might be far more important to be understanding and caring and compassionate at some point in time than actually handing over a piece of knowledge or a piece of information to that particular student. So it's all there, and it's important when we set up the frameworks that they're all accommodated. Sanguinetti says that the state for an ACE teacher, their personal skills, attributes and values are an intrinsic part of the pedagogical good practice. How they teach, and this is where I really came into the picture. I can understand it when I read this paragraph here. How they teach is inseparable from their personalities, their aspirations and their commitments to learners. All of that is in the oneness of the teacher in the classroom. Personality is very important. Again, in other dimensions, probably university lecturers, you get the personalities. The lecturers can be themselves. They're, hey man, I'm out there cool, or hey there, I'm very formal and I'm academic and represent myself this way. In your situation, your general vibrancy, your general enthusiasm for your subject, for life, is probably what is engaging the students. You are almost one of them. You just happen to have a different space in the room at that time. But they're very much looking at you as an equal or somebody who's experienced this and operates in that mentor type role, somebody who's there to support me rather than direct and direct me into certain behaviours or actions. So the picture of the ACE learning experience that emerges from within these studies and reports is of the synergistic relationship between pedagogies and places, of multifaceted, person-centred pedagogy sustained within the supportive, community-based learning environment. Gee, I didn't realise I wrote all that. When you analyse that, though, and pull it apart, that word multifaceted keeps coming out at you. It's not a one-dimensional thing. You probably don't appreciate because you just come into the classroom every day and do it. But behind it is all of these factors clicking in, and students are reading all of that. That's what's important, not just the words that are coming out of your mouth to provide the instruction, but how you're interacting with them, how you're supporting them, just the lightheartedness that you sometimes have towards things. Sometimes your sternness. No, I'm sorry, that's the standard you need to reach. Otherwise, you don't complete this course. All of that comes into play, and when we're doing the literature, it's written in a high term of language. But I want to give credit to you guys through that language. That is saying that people are special. They come to this area with a diversity that's not always present in standard teaching in other sectors. And you should feel proud of that, and it's important that people like me try to capture that. Let's start to get towards the standards themselves. When we go through the materials, we start to find out that there's 4 large dimensions that people are looking at when you're looking at a teaching standard. You look at the teacher themselves. That's all those personality factors, all that training, all the background that goes in there. There's the actual process of teaching in itself, how they administer or carry out that program. their knowledge of the curriculum, and when I say curriculum, I mean the content of your subject area. That might be in a formal curriculum, it may well be just through your own knowledge and background as a specialist in a field of study. And finally, the learning environment, the place that learning's occurring in and the atmosphere that you're creating in that place. I gave a talk this morning on evidence-based learning. And one of the factors that's looked at is how important the environment that you're in is. The physical environment on these studies doesn't count a jot. You can be in a hovel or you can be in Buckingham Palace. It's the tone and the atmosphere that's set up in the room through the interaction of the personalities and the players in the room that counts. So that when we say environment, it's not because we've got 4 brick walls or we've got big windows or we've got air conditioners that makes the difference. It's those interpersonal interactions that come into play. We have to look at the vet sector because the two sectors are pretty close when you come to put it together. Not identical, otherwise we'd all be vet sectors or we'd all be A sectors. But the vet sector has a lot of information that we can draw on and use in terms of what we're putting together for our particular section here. What we found that in the A sector, they're talking about a number of requirements that vet professionals have, and that word professional is important. We are professionals. We're part of the teaching profession, and we should look at ourselves in that way. So, and I'm not going to read through all of those. Some of those will apply to you because you're in the fields where that occurs. Others, you may not have a strong calling for it. One of the things we'll come to in a moment is the concept of levels, that not everybody will be considered at the same level. Obviously, the Michaels and the Lindas and people like that who have a supervisionary role, we look at it differently there, what they will do. Even at Terry's level, at the principal's level, you'll see that these standards will apply to her or people in that position as much as they do to what we might just call the classroom teacher. And so we've got to have a standard that fits across all of that. So in terms of business and client focus, yeah, you should have that in your classroom, but it may be more important for Terry to have a heightened awareness of those types of things because that's her role in the organisation to attract those people into the class structures and programs that are being offered. So I wonder if I just come back. I think I might have missed one. Did I miss one? One behind that. No, that's all right. I didn't. Okay. There, that's good. Thank you. So that's the very concept I was talking about. In that we have different levels. So you have people who are new practitioners just coming into the game. You've got those who've been in classrooms probably longer than I've been in long classes. So that length of experience obviously has a role to play, and when we're drawing up standards we have to consider the differences that would occur because of that and make allowance for the variations that would occur. The other concept of a level is, of course, having a CEO or principal at the top, having some mid-level managers in below, and then your staff underneath. You can't expect everybody to be operating at the CEO level, otherwise a lot of the work that's meant to be done in the classrooms is not going to be done. At the same time, your CEO can't be sitting around coming into every classroom and having little practice that she's got or they've got a different role or function to play. However, the principles of how they're operating, what makes them an effective teacher in this domain will be the same, just at different understandings or different levels. Okay, the final standard was, the final thing we did, we looked at the A sector, we looked at the vet sector, and we just went out to look at other sectors to see what they were doing. And the one we got the most insight was from schools, because right across the country now, schools have put into place a teaching standards framework, and there is actually now a national standard. So each of the states have developed their own, and now they've all been sort of collapsed in a sense to one, because in a sense they all say the same thing, slightly different language, but they can put them into the national standards. So we've now got national standards for teachings, and we have national standards for principal or leadership. We're trying to head in that direction with this particular program or project that we've got underway here. What came out of that was probably the way they structure these things, not what they actually write in the boxes, but the way they present it and put it together. Okay, when I went through the literature, and I'll just throw in this one, when I went through the literature, I did a search for specific languages that were common in all the reports and all the writings on this. There's no need for me to go through all of those. What I wanted to show is that we did pick up, wherever we went, we would find things like you have to be culturally sensitive. You would find things that you had to be reflective. Your personality played a big... Every report started referring to a number of these things. So they seem to be key concepts or key indicators that you needed to account for in the ACE sector. And we'll come back to that in a moment when you see the structure come back together. So that's what I've just said. It's an attempt now to capture everything I've said up to this point, all the research, all the sectors, all the different ways of looking at it. How do you capture all of that and then bring it back to your classroom, to the specificness of ACE or community education. So what we've come up with in terms of having a teaching standards framework are things that are called 5 elements. They're the big circles. We have 25 aspects, 25 things that fit inside those 5 elements. So on average, 5 per element. It's not quite that smooth, but roughly that's how it works out. And then 3 key stages. The 5 elements. These are the big organisers. These are the things that you can put lots of other things underneath and break it down. The big 5 elements are: teachers know their students and how they learn. If you're a good teacher, you know students and you've got some theory of how they learn. It might belong to Einstein, or it might belong to Piaget. It might belong to Mrs. Smith, who lives next door, because she knows what's wrong with education these days and she can tell you. It doesn't really matter. You have that understanding of how people learn. Teachers provide safe and supportive learning environments. We make sure that we provide this environment that's supportive and comforting when they come together. Teachers know their subject and content. Obviously they have to, otherwise they would have a bit of trouble turning up for 10 weeks without really knowing what you're talking about, although I do it quite frequently. Teachers, in that process, teachers plan, assess and report on the effectiveness. That's standard procedure. That's what we all do. We plan our lessons, we deliver our lessons, we assess, and then somehow we report either to the students or to the system on how that all comes out. Then, and this is the important one, and I guess it's the reason why we come together on nights like this, is that teachers are always trying to improve their own professional knowledge. One of the things we know is that students won't learn or improve their learning unless teachers improve their practice. Had we just said, let's go down to the back of the cave and draw cave figures, and you're the teacher, and we decided to stay down there, that's where we'd still be. One day, somebody said, we might go up to the front of the cave for a change. And that's what we have to do. We have to be continually looking at how we change our practice. There's 2 key concepts here, is that, we all have our own theory of use. We all have been around long enough to know what works. And you don't have to tell me too much more, because I know it, I've been there, and I use that argument as well as anybody else. The other thing is that with our theory of use, we tend to plateau our performance. We tend to we grow. Oh, I think I'm just about there. I might go to the odd course, I might read the odd book, there might be something that Bob told me about, I might flick along and have a look at it, but that's about it. I really plateau out. And what we've got to get to the stage in all our teaching is, how do we improve our own professional practice? How do we just improve it a notch? If we leave it where it is, that's the outcome that will be there forever in terms of our students' performance. If we up our own ante, if we up our teaching performance, then we will obviously have a greater impact on the students that we bring in. So, the 3 levels. I don't want you to get tied up in the language. We'll probably change all of this, but it's language that's out there just to discriminate. There's proficient, accomplished and advanced. If I put that into this college, you would expect Terry to be proficient. You would expect the middle managers to be accomplished, and you would expect all classroom teachers to be advanced. It's not to say, though, that the classroom teacher couldn't be proficient. They could well be at that level. But in the broad spectrum of the abilities, and you'll see this in the charts when we put them up, that's where we would expect most people to be fitting at the classroom level, at that advanced. No, I've said that back to front. I've put them on there the wrong way. But proficient would be the classroom teacher, sorry. The accomplished would be the middle management, and the advanced would be the CEO, principal type person. Sorry, I've put them around the wrong way. I don't want to read through these too much because I've just about explained that the proficient level, that you've demonstrated successful teaching practice. That's what you've done. When you move to the accomplished level, you're acknowledged by your peers as being superior, and you're often in some sort of supervisory role to pass on some of that experience and teaching practice to others. And there's an expectation that you can do that. And obviously when you reach the advanced level, you're using that to lead organisations or to lead teams throughout the organisation. The principles are the same, LESs are the same, but just at a varying level. 25 aspects. I'm not going to read the 25 aspects because when we get some paperwork in a minute, you'll start to see those, and when you go away from here, you can look at them in more detail. I just wanted to put them up here to show you that they broadly fit under those 5 elements that we've got. There's a few pages of those. I won't hold you up with those. Okay, so we finally come to what does this all start to look like. We start with a blank page and we draw some boxes and columns on it. And the first thing is we put in the element. I don't know if you can read that from where you are. It's on your paperwork that you'll see. But element 1 is teachers know their students and how they come together. Where do the aspects fit? The levels. There's your 3 levels. Tonight I would be principally talking about down here. We can come across these and you'll see how the language just varies. It's the same statement with a higher order of language in the expectation of how that role is carried out. And then finally, you would have those 25 aspects slotted in under each of the elements, roughly 5 per element. And the standards or the statements of what you're supposed to achieve or what's expected of you would be put into the grid under the matrix that's there. So if you're in the proficient level and aspect 1, the first aspect, you would read that and say, right, can I do that? Is that a part of my practice or isn't it? And that's what it would finally look like. And I'm carrying this around, I'm not quite sure why, but that's a set of the standards. That's just pure standards themselves. And that will be the things we'll tweak and change and alter the language a little bit as we go along, so it fits into your classroom. So what I've got now is a set of slides, and I'll just go through those. Remember that long list of words that I had and key concepts and core concepts. When we set up the framework, we then went back through to find if all of those existed inside the framework as we set it up. And so we'll just go through these very quickly. To show that that whole list was accommodated inside our framework. So all the theory, all the ideas that were out there in the literature and the research suggesting these are the types of things we should be looking at, they've all been included largely in the aspects. Those 25 aspects cover all of that in our particular diagram or matrix that we've put up. So, to conclude, and there is a little bit more after this because we'll get to what's on your desk. To conclude, when we've drawn up this framework, it's got a number of purposes. We want to provide a common reference point that describes and celebrates and supports the complex and varied nature of the ACE teacher's work. So the first thing is it's there to provide a language if a supervisor is talking to a staff member, if a student is talking to you, there's a certain language that you can use that's captured in this diagram that explain what you're about and why you're about it, rather than everybody having their own language and people going and say, well, he said this, somebody else said that. We have a common language, particularly in your professional development level, where you can talk about common concepts and both be on the same page as to where you're going. It describes what the ACE teacher needs to know and understand and be able to do in relation to teaching. Not the content or the subject, but in relation to teaching. And finally, it provides a direction and a structure to support the development of teachers. In a moment, we'll look at how you will use this yourself. And you will actually end up with a profile of what you look like across that. Yeah, I'm good at that, not so good at this. Oh yeah, I think, bang, up. So we look at that. When we collect all of that up, and we're not going to go about that at this stage, and it'll always be done anonymously, but it will give us a profile of our teaching staff. So if everybody is down on computer skills, we can say, right, let's put tonight on about computer skills, because that will cover the most people. But here's an individual thing. I've seen that there's an ad in one of the journals saying there's a course about some particular aspect of teaching. We've got 3 people who could benefit from that. Let's send them off to do something like that, because that will benefit them in their development. Oh, that's the last. That's the kit that we'll supply you with. It's got everything in it. So once you start on the sheets in front of you, we'll send you out the full kit, and it'll be no problem. You'll just walk into every classroom and be ready to go. Let's go to the handouts. I'll just grab one for a second. I'll get back to it. Right, the handout I want you to look at is this one. It's got some numbers running down the front. I think that's why it's on your desk. And what we've essentially done here is to take, I don't think I've got this. No. We've got the aspects down the, we've got the element across the top, and we've got the aspects down the side. Then it describes what you would do at the various levels, and let's say we're looking at the proficient level. You don't have to worry about the other 2 boxes unless that's where you are at any particular time. We would then ask you to read the indicator statement. So you have the respect for diverse social, cultural, ethnic and religious backgrounds of students. So if you have a knowledge of how students learn, you would have an understanding of how the social, the cultural, the religious part of their lives impacts on their learning. We all know that those factors impact how people learn. Then the standard says that you can demonstrate a knowledge of the impact of social, cultural, religious background factors in students and how these factors affect learning. So that's the standard. How do we measure that standard? We go to the indicator. And the indicator would say, and these are all at 3 levels. First of all, I appreciate that students come from a variety of social, ethnic and religious backgrounds. I know that, doesn't mean anything more than that, but I actually know that they do come from that, and I appreciate that, but I'm not going to do anything about it. You could rate yourself as a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5 on that aspect. When you go to the second aspect, it's asking a little bit more of you though. It's indicator, sorry. I know that the difference in students' social and ethnic background affects their learning. I know that that does, and therefore, if you were watching me teach, you would see that I accommodate that, because I know that's a factor, and I'm going to speak in a certain way, or I'm going to present materials in a certain way to help it. Which comes to the third one.
Interrupt for a second. That's well and good, but what about if you've got a mixed class? You're not just targeting one person in the class from a specific background. You've got to accommodate the whole class.
Yeah.
So
and let's go through the rest of the standards, because we come to your ability to accommodate the whole class inside that structure. Good teachers know how to accommodate the individual within the group, and they know how to accommodate groups within the whole class. And you can't spend the whole lesson accommodating one person because they've got a language difficulty, but you would make some attempt during that lesson to give them a chance to be successful and to advance their learning. In my background is in primary teaching. I've got 30 of them, so you only get 1/30th of my time I can't give you all my time. You'll get your fair share, which is 1/30 or 1/10 or 1/12 of the time in theory. That's what you're entitled to, no more, no less. So the teacher, you don't have to go and birch yourself because you felt you didn't spend enough time with somebody on one night. What I want to see as an outsider is that, yes, you do accommodate that to some degree. You've either grouped the classes to allow that to happen, you've gone over to an individual and did a paraphrase, or you've provided some scaffolding for them, why don't you think of this, this and this. Whereas this group's more advanced, you can say, right, you guys, if you can move on to the second page, I can see you finished it. And that's how you start to accommodate it. I don't want to go into how you teach it at this point in time. I'm just saying that's inside our standards. Finally, I alter my teaching to accommodate the differences. Well, that's the crux. That's the one I'm looking at. Okay, you appreciate it and you know about it, but do you actually accommodate? And some people will say yes pretty strongly to the first two, but have to pull back a bit on that third sort of level because they actually don't. Or the question might be, I don't think I do it enough. So I should be trying to push myself harder at that. So I'm not going to rate myself a 4 there. I'd be lucky to be a 3. What does 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 mean? It just means whatever you think 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 means. Obviously, 1 means not much. 5 means you're probably pretty perfect at it. 3 means you think you're somewhere in the middle, around the average sort of mark, much the same as anybody else would be functioning. Your perceptions of that will be a mile out. One of the things that I learned as a teacher was that I didn't think I was a very good teacher. What I learned when I became a principal was I wasn't too bad. Because there are a few shockers out there. and you think that I'm the only one who can't do it. I know I got the last scholarship to go to Teachers College, and so I must have been pretty dumb. So I assumed that everybody else who got to Teachers College before me, or enrolled before me, was obviously far more intelligent and capable than I was. And it's funny how those things do affect your self-perception and understanding. But once you get out into the bigger world and you have a look around, you realise that's not always the case. So how you rate yourself is purely up to you. I don't care as the master of this system. If you want to rate yourself 5, 5, 5, 5, bully, go ahead. I don't know who you'll help too much, whether you'll help yourself or the college or your students, but it's not going to matter that you do. That's fine, and it's up to you to do that. That's the stage we're up to now, where we're going to ask you to take these away and have a go at filling them out. There'll be language here that you don't even understand. You'll say, what does that mean? I don't do that. That's not a puddle. You'll have a discussion with me and I'll explain, did you do this? Or when you were doing in the lesson, did you do that? Well, that's what that means. It's not, it's a technical language, but the practice isn't all about being technically, literally to the word. We all plan. I planned for this meeting tonight when I arrived, because I put those notes on top of the page. That was my planning for tonight. All this other stuff was sitting there for months, and I just had to organise my thoughts. So I came in and in 5 minutes I planned. I might have spent all afternoon putting something down onto paper and planning. I spent a fair bit of time planning how to put something like this together. So planning doesn't mean that I've got 87 volumes of recorded notes about my teaching practice. It could be, as I said, on the back of a stamp, or it could be that you've got a program that's got some columns in it and you put certain things in and tick certain things off. That assessment will be made later on by others as to whether you plan adequately or not. I would suggest most of you do, or you'd have big troubles if you're not planning. So the idea at this stage, and I don't want to work through all of these, I mean that's just, my time's up now anyway, but what I want to do now is then to suggest the next phase of this, which we would like to try in at the end of this year. So we would like you guys to go and start fiddling around with this and telling us the problems and the difficulties that you're currently experiencing with it so that we can modify it. The next stage, because at the end of the day, we can't go to the business manager and say, oh, we've got the greatest teachers. We have got every teacher 5-star. how did you calculate that? Well, they all rated themselves. And they'd be the best judges of that. So we do have to balance that. And there will be a process put in place which won't be onerous, and it'll be over a 3, 4, 5 year period where a supervisor, and I'll use that word, or a more senior officer will also make ratings of you as they know you, and then you sit down and make a composite of that. The supervisor won't always know fully because they're not walking around with you 24 hours a day seeing what you're doing in your classroom, but they will come in for a period, or they will see a written program. You might video something and send it in as an example of what you're doing. That's down the track a little bit from now, but there will be a discussion that will come to an agreement where, yeah, I think that's an adequate rating of my ability. The sub-bits won't matter too much. What matters is the total standard. So you might be a 1-ish, 2-ish on a couple of those indicators, but the rest of it is very strong. Who's going to worry? It's not that, oh, I've got to get 5 out of 5, or I've got to get an average of 4 or something through the whole page. It's not about that. It's just a mechanism for us to start to interrogate some way in how you see yourself and how the system would also see you, and how that's in balance together. That's just about my spiel. It's been rushed and I've been talking really fast because there's a lot to get through, and I don't want to denigrate what's there by just skipping over and saying it doesn't matter. It does matter. As a profession, it matters. And for this college it matters because it's one of the things that we've said this is a target for us and this is what we want to nail at the end of the period. So I guess just in conclusion, what I'd like you to do is give permission, and if you don't, that's no problem, that I can contact you by email, because that's really the only way I can do it. Occasionally I might, and I've worked with 2 or 3 people already on this, there's 2 or 3 people in the room who've spent more time with me than tonight. I would like to, perhaps come out and see how you're operating, particularly, say, in the non-accredited areas where there's probably more scope for I don't know what you call it, but a more dynamic style of teaching in that you've got a subject area that isn't constrained by curriculums and standards and all of these things. And it would be lovely to go in and see those rooms working. But I'll just finish on this. If you give me permission to do that, then through Danielle, I'll send out an email and just so you've got my contact, so you know where I am. And then I'm really going to ask that this group, if you possibly can, just have one go at it. You could do this. You could take it home, put it on the table, read it first through, say, this is garbage, I don't want anything to do with it. And when I give my feedback, that's what I'll say. It won't offend me at all. Because if I get 50 people saying that, then I'm going to say, hey, we're going the wrong way here. This is not right. But it's up to you. But what I'd like you to do, one of the things I'd consciously like you to think of is how much time it takes. It would really be done in one sitting. You would do this over a period of time. But some people could sit down and probably rattle it off tonight. They're so confident and understand their teaching to the point where they keep that pretty quickly. So if you're happy with that, then I'll conclude there and just ask if there are any questions to finish up on. Yep.
I'm actually quite impressed with this idea there, because it's just got you thinking what level, what you were talking about.
Yeah.
About, yes, you know about it, but you actually do something about it, and I think that's quite brilliant. Where I stumble with this, just looking at it quickly just now, is depends how long you're teaching. So if you only have a 12-hour course, or you have, a whole term course, you have a course that move at different levels over time, over the year, for example, with the same student, that makes a big difference how you're going to answer this as well. It's different levels.
And obviously that will come in through the feedback to us. I will get some data, gender, length of experience, type of course or something like that. And then when we drop that onto the spreadsheet, it will throw up to us, those sorts of problems. So we then go and address that question as to do we... What we will always have is one matrix that fits all. because you can't say, well, for these types of courses or for these types of people, we'll have this standard, but over here we'll have another standard. Standards, the Institute of Teachers standard goes from teachers in preschools to teachers in Year 12. It covers the whole range, and so we've got to come to some compromise. And I think you might be surprised, while you might shorten the time you do some of those aspects, you will still do them. Because if you don't do them, you're going to run into some sort of problem, and you have to accommodate the time factor into all of that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
You've got to integrate all of it, but I believe that if it's a shorter course, you probably will be more into the 3 and not that much 5, because you don't have time to spend to move to that.
And I would suggest there's somebody else sitting in this room saying, I've only got short time, I'm not going to put 3s, I'm going to put 5s. We will all view it differently, and that's what we want to hear and filter that back.
Rana, just one quick question. This matrix, if I may use that word,
that's what it is.
Is a kind of a self-assessment from the staff, and there is, as you indicated, at some stage there will be some kind of standard checked through an outside person, not just the staff. Where do the learners come in here? Where do the learners' feedback come here?
When you go through one of those things, one of those matrices, it actually says that you seek feedback from your students.
Right.
So they're already built in there. And if you're not saying at the end of my course, can you tell me how I'm going? What we're finding in education generally, it's not formative or summative assessment that matters. It's not what is said or assessed at the end. It's what is said along the journey that's the important feedback. And so you'll probably be working with students and they'll be saying to you, halfway through the course, oh, I'm well behind, I don't know, can you repeat this bit? Can we go back over that? Or can you tell me where I can find? And that sort of feedback is what you're talking about.
Yes,
it's on the job, on the go feedback or assessment. But you do need the students to be telling you how they feel, particularly adult learners. It might be a little bit different in kindergarten, but with adult learners, surely they've got the right to make some assessment of you. Your value of that and your assessment of their opinion can vary, but it doesn't hurt to receive it, and you might in general get more surprises, losses, than negatives. I'm just conscious of the time.
Just going to ask, do you want us to put our names on these?
Right now, no. What I need you to do now is you'll just take them home, and I'd like you to just put them in a nice safe place so you can come back to them. Within the week, I'll talk to Danielle about getting emails, and I'll send out the initial email that will just say, hi, I'm Brian, just reminding you we're doing those things. If you want to give me feedback, you can. Specifically today, I'd like to know, did you have this sort of problem, or did you run into this, or those sorts of things. Then you'll just feed back. It's not going to be an ongoing thing that every week you get an email and things like that. I'd like to think, because what I want to do is I'll collate that information, because when we go to the state conference, the national conference, we want to say that this has been tested through this process of a few having a look and then a larger group. Then there is the whole college that needs to be involved. And that's when we'll kick in, say in term 3, even if you're not here, you're going to get one of these to start, trying to work through it. Then, as I said, a select group might sit down with some supervisors in what I call term 4. I don't know what you guys, you work more in semesters and term 4, where a couple of supervisors and a couple of you, because you're quite confident and happy with all of that happening, can do a little trial of the types of conversations you have around this as supervisor stroke staff member. And then in the new year, we could be seriously looking at starting to roll this out in a conscious way. And we would like to think that at the end of the process, we can say, you won't be accredited, but you'll at least be an approved, and we've got to find the language right, so that when we go to business, we say we've got 29 approved at the proficiency level, we've got 30 at the middle level and whatever the advanced level is. Your course will be run by one of the teachers in this, proficiency, advanced standard or whatever it is, and that guarantees the quality as far as the college is concerned. We have a regular program of updating and checking that those standards are being maintained over time. It's not just a one-off. Every 2 to 3 years, these things will roll around, and we'll have another look at people at that stage. I see it also as a way of, I don't know whether you call it promotion, but if you want to upgrade to levels and things, you can say, I've been working at these standards and I've achieved them. There are people in my organisation who've ticked me off and said I can do that. I don't have to argue the case too strongly, because here's the evidence here, in black and white, that I'm achieving those sorts of standards, if that's what the other organisation is looking for.
Just a quick question. With feedback, is there the stage where the wording can be changed?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see reference to adult learning principles at all, and there's a few places where I think it should be.
Yeah, if you think that's there, that's what you've got to start.
Adult learners, not
yeah,
teachers of kids.
yeah, that's right. And
Need to have.
yeah, so and I think I've always used something like students to keep it consistent wherever I've used the learner.
Yeah, just most of us would have the TAE or TAA and adult learning principles.
And that would be a good improvement if there was a belief that that's the language that should be in there. And
So,
as I stand here, I don't see any problems from that. I've lifted that off, other models, obviously, to try and get consistent.
yeah,
Writing those to keep them all the same is rather difficult. But
it's a big difference when you have someone that doesn't address adult learning principles in
Yeah,
training.
and that literature that I had up front was saying that. That was saying that
Yeah,
very
I just
clearly.
sort of-
Yeah. No, it's a good pickup already. Yeah. Okay, I think I've run my dash.
Thank
If there
you,
are no
Mark.
more questions. Yeah, and I'm sorry if those who are bored, but that's where we're heading. Thank you.